It's also important to include a range of beneficial pasture herbs within your pasture diversity of plants, and there's different types of pasture plants that have different functions within that community that are a benefit to the overall health of the livestock and the regeneration and the health of the farming system itself. One of them, the nitrogen fixating plants, have the ability to actually add nitrogen to the soil through a process where the roots of those plants, so the roots of the plants like clover and lucerne, have a beneficial association with some bacteria, and these bacteria can fix atmospheric nitrogen. So about 70% of the atmosphere is nitrogen, so there's an abundance of nitrogen in the atmosphere, but there's very little nitrogen in the soil. So these nitrogen fixating bacteria have the ability to fix nitrogen and create nitrates as a result of that. And these nitrates, they can feed to the plants, or the excess nitrates produced actually go into the soil. And in exchange for that, the plant will actually feed those bacteria sugars, because the bacteria can't photosynthesize and produce sugars, so they exchange the nitrates that they can fix from the atmospheric nitrogen for the sugars that the plants can produce. So it's a beneficial relationship between those two species. So any nitrogen fixating plants have those bacteria in their root nodules that can do that. And including those nitrogen fixating plants in your system enables you to increase the levels of nitrogen in the soil in a way that doesn't require the additional fertilizers to do that. Other useful plants are mineral accumulating plants. So they're plants which have a big taproot, and they can get down into the subsoil, and again through an association with bacteria and fungi, they're able to draw out the minerals from deeper in the soil than many other plants can access, and they accumulate those nutrients in their leaves. So when an animal comes along and eats those plants, they're getting a concentrated form of these minerals that would otherwise be hard to access within that environment, because other plants don't do that as effectively. So having a diversity of mineral accumulating plants ensures that you're getting a wider range of minerals in the diet of the animals. And if done correctly, in often cases, if the animals are adapted to the particular environment, you don't need salt licks or other mineral supplements to the diet of the animals, because the plants themselves can extract those minerals out of the ground and make them available to grazers by eating it. So some of the plants like chicory, plantain, sheep burnet and dandelion all have those characteristics. They're all leafy pasture herbs, and they all have deep tap roots that can draw out those nutrients and make them available to browsers. There's other plants too that are weeds. Really, they don't have a beneficial use as far as the diet of the browsers go, but you can think of them as being indicator species, or even species that help rehabilitate the landscape. So things like thistles, gorse and nettle are considered a nuisance and a weed, but they're there for a particular reason. They indicate a certain level of health or function of that system, and they're often associated with the compaction of soil or the acidification of soil. And in association with that's the loss of some minerals from the soil, which may actually still be there, but because the soil is being compacted, the ecology in the soil is broken down, and as the soil pH has been acidified, those minerals aren't available to many of the other plants. So it's only these more resilient plants that can survive in such a habitat. And if just left alone, and if you focus on the restoration of that ecosystem by doing rotational grazing, by adding broad spectrum natural fertilizer onto that pasture, and by reseeding with some beneficial plants, over time that system will diversify and regain in health, and these weeds will actually die away. But they can give you a good indicator of what some of the first steps might be. Like, is it too acidic and it needs liming? Is it too compacted and would best be just left fallow for a year, or produce a crop that would help break up the soil, and do a series of rotational crops on that paddock to give it a bit of a rest and diversify production to help stabilise that system again. Or add a certain mineral that might be lacking in that soil, that weed is indicating is missing in that. And then by establishing these procedures, you can often remove those problem weeds from your pasture system just by working on the overall health of that system. And these weeds won't be in that system if it's a healthy, functioning, diverse system. They are outcompeted by these other plants. So the presence of them is really an indication that pasture system is not healthy and there's something going wrong, and they can help guide you as to what the best solutions may be to improve its health.